Recruiting and inspiring volunteers is incredibly difficult. Think about some of these volunteer statistics. On average, people volunteer 50 hours per year. That's less than 1 hour a week. How about this? 71% of people only volunteer in one organization. And approximately 63 million Americans volunteer each year, which is 25% of the adult population. When you look at these statistics, what you realize is there's not a ton of volunteers. It's not like every organization has an overabundance of volunteers. So when you think about recruitment and you think about inspiring volunteers, you've got to do it well, and it's got to be something that engages a volunteer to love their work, to love your mission, and to be engaged. There are 5 things that I would like to suggest that you might consider as a leader who's processing and thinking about volunteers. Number 1 is this. Focus on retainment, not recruitment. Recruitment is when you're actively out there trying to get new volunteers. Retainment is actually being committed to the culture and the care of the existing volunteers that you have. Because here's what I want to tell you. Retainment is the new recruitment. Keeping your volunteers, keeping them engaged, keeping them satisfied, creating a culture where they love to come and give their time, their talent, and their treasure to your organization is incredibly valuable. If you start anywhere, start there. The second thing to consider as you recruit and inspire volunteers is the way in which you would create time-bound pathways by month. So let's say an average person has an hour a month to give to you. What could they accomplish in an hour? Be specific about those opportunities. What if a volunteer has 3 hours a month to give, or 5, or 7, or 10? Be very specific about what a volunteer could do if they could give you 10 hours of their precious time per month. The third suggestion might be one that you actually know, but very few of us actually put it into practice. For a lot of leaders, they're thinking about how to engage volunteers by communicating the needs and leveraging a newsletter and social media, when some of the best ways to actually recruit new volunteers is through your existing volunteers. So some suggestions that I might have would include things like give people a motivation to bring somebody to an event where they can volunteer together. Maybe create a contest where your organization encourages current volunteers to actually think about people within their network and their sphere of influence who would love coming to serve. And I will tell you this, of all of the organizations that are doing an incredible job of engaging volunteers right now, it's organizations that serve pets, that are animal rescue locations, because people have a very unique DNA and a care for their animal and their pet, and those are seeing some of the greatest opportunities for volunteerism. So learn from them. Figure out ways to actually engage your current volunteers to open up their sphere of influence to volunteer for something that they've actually demonstrated they're willing to give you some of their precious time to serve in. Number 4 is to empower people's passions. I know, say that 5 times fast. I'm a passionate person. I love to be passionate about the things that I do, and people are often much more successful over a long period of time in volunteering when you actually engage their passions to what they're doing. So let me give you an example. If you know somebody is more of a people-oriented person, the worst thing you could do in their volunteerism is put them behind a desk and ask them to work on a project that's only with their computer. And I think the opposite is true. If you've got somebody that you know just loves working with spreadsheets and kind of doing a project and getting it to completion, but doesn't love being with people, they would be best kind of doing those type of projects. Maybe it's an Excel spreadsheet, maybe it's working on your database, but finding out where people's passions are and leveraging those is not only good for the way in which people will engage your organization, but it's the way that they will actually stick around long term. If I'm engaged in something, if I'm passionate about what I'm doing, the likelihood of me sticking around and telling other people about it is much higher. And here's the 5th suggestion that I would have for you when it comes to recruiting and inspiring volunteers. You want to engage the 5 generations of individuals that are currently serving and volunteering in your organization. This might be my favorite thing to look at. Take a look. This is the generations in the US workforce, and you're probably familiar with these terms. Baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. We've got Generation Alpha coming in next. But if you look over here to the left, look at the percentage of current US population. Amongst those 4 core generations, they're about all the same. And if you have a volunteer recruitment and inspiration kind of idea that fits one of those generations only, you're missing out on the other 3. So here's my suggestion. When it comes to recruiting baby boomers, you're going to recruit them as a volunteer differently than you would recruit Gen Z. You're going to recruit a millennial different than you would actually recruit Gen X, because they all have uniquenesses and nuances to the things that make sense to them. When you think about a baby boomer, they're kind of within the box. This is what I do. This is the time that I show up. I'm always 15 minutes early. This is what I do. This is when I leave. But you might get something different from Gen Z, much more creative, much more cerebral in their thinking. They're passionate about the mission and not just accomplishing the task. So as you think about how you're going to recruit and inspire volunteers, you want to think about how generations will hear your message and the way in which they serve your organization differently. I would love to hear more about the ways and the strategies that you're engaging volunteers.